I had a friend, let's call him Marcus, who was the kind of man who gave everything: time, money, attention, energy. If you called him at 2 in the morning, he picked up. If you needed someone to help you move, he was the first one there. For years I watched him pour himself into people who treated his generosity like a utility, something you use when you need it, and forget about the rest of the time. Then life pulled us in different directions. 3 years passed, and when I saw him again, I almost didn't recognize him. Not because he looked different, because he moved differently. He spoke less. He smiled slower. And when someone tried to take from him, I watched it happen in real time at a dinner table. He just looked at the person. No anger, no explanation. Just a look that said, "We both know what you're doing, and it won't work." I pulled him aside afterward and asked what happened to him. He said, "I finally understood which version of myself I was choosing to be." There are 2 versions of you. Version 1 apologizes for taking up space. Version 1 explains himself when he doesn't have to. Version 1 gives until he's hollow and then wonders why people don't respect him. Version 2 has been through the same pain, maybe more, but he alchemized it into something else entirely. Version 2 doesn't perform strength. He simply has no more need to prove it. This is about the 8 shifts that move you from one to the other, not motivational shifts, psychological ones, the kind that change how you walk into a room. Let's start here. The first shift is about what you're giving away and who you're giving it to. Look, most people have been taught that generosity is a virtue without conditions, and I'm not here to tell you generosity is wrong. But here's the truth. Value follows scarcity. That's not cynicism, that's physics. When water is everywhere, no one is grateful for a glass of it. When it's scarce, people protect it, trade for it, fight over it. Your time, your attention, your emotional energy, these are not infinite resources. And yet most people dispense them like they cost nothing to anyone who holds out a hand, and then feel confused and hollow when those same people treat them like a vending machine. There's a psychological mechanism called devaluation through accessibility. When something is always available, the human brain stops registering it as valuable. This isn't cruelty, it's wiring. It's the same reason a child ignores a toy they can have anytime, but obsesses over the one they can only look at. When you are always available, always giving, always there, you train the people around you to see you as background, furniture, infrastructure, not a person with weight and worth, but a resource to be drawn from. Right? And this is the part no one tells you. The people taking from you are not always aware they're doing it. Some of them genuinely believe they care about you. But caring about someone and valuing them are not the same thing. You can care about tap water. You don't value it until the pipes break. Version 1 keeps giving, hoping generosity will eventually be recognized. Version 2 understands that recognition is not earned through volume of sacrifice. It's earned through perceived scarcity of access. So the shift is this. You stop, not out of bitterness, not to punish anyone. You stop because you finally understand that what you've been calling kindness has been functioning as self-erasure. Every time you said yes when you meant no, you were training someone to expect yes from you. Every time you showed up for a person who wouldn't show up for you, you were drawing a map that said, "I am available and you are not obligated." That map costs you more than you know, not just in time, in identity, in how you see yourself. Machiavelli once wrote that men are driven more by fear of loss than hope of gain. What that means in practice is this. People protect what they might lose. When there's no possibility of losing access to you, when you've made yourself permanently and unconditionally available, there's nothing to protect. You've removed the only lever that creates genuine appreciation. The shift isn't about becoming cold. It's about understanding that your presence is a gift, not a guarantee. And gifts given without discernment are not generosity. They're a slow form of surrender. Version 1 says, maybe if I give more, they'll finally see it. Now the second shift, and this one goes somewhere most people don't want to go. Pain. You've had some, maybe a lot, maybe the kind that restructured how you see the world, a betrayal, a failure, a loss that didn't ask your permission before it arrived. Here's the question version 1 never asks himself, what is this for? Not in the spiritual sense, in the strategic sense. Because pain that is only felt and never processed becomes weight. But pain that is examined, broken down, understood, metabolized, becomes something entirely different. It becomes information. It becomes precision. There is a reason the most formidable people you've ever met tend to have histories that would have broken someone less deliberate. Not because suffering makes you strong automatically. It doesn't. Unprocessed suffering makes you reactive, defensive, predictable. But suffering that you've moved through consciously, that you've looked at directly and said, I know what you're teaching me, that becomes armor in the truest sense. Not the armor that keeps everything out. The armor that means you've already been hit by the worst version of this, and you're still standing. Look, version 1 avoids the wound. He performs recovery. He tells people he's fine, builds walls that he calls boundaries, and then gets triggered by the same pattern again and again because the original lesson was never actually taken. Version 2 sits with the wound long enough to understand its shape. He doesn't perform pain for sympathy. He doesn't perform recovery for approval. He goes somewhere quiet and asks, what does this tell me about how the world actually works, as opposed to how I wanted it to work? And this is the part no one tells you. The answer to that question is almost always uncomfortable. Because the world as it actually works is not the world we were sold. People are not as loyal as they claim. Circumstances are not as fair as they should be. And the gap between what you were promised and what is real, that gap is where most people get stuck. They keep trying to make reality match the promise. Version 2 closes that gap differently. He updates the promise. Machiavelli understood this when he said that a man who adapts his mode of action to the nature of the times will prosper. The nature of the times, not the nature of the times as they should be, as they are. Pain, real pain, gives you access to that reality that comfort never could. Every scar is a data point. Every betrayal is a tutorial. Every time you were underestimated, that's a lesson in how people project their own limitations onto you and how you can use that. Version 1 says, why did this happen to me? Version 2 says, what does this now allow me to do that I couldn't before? Not because he's inhuman, but because he's decided that suffering without extraction is just suffering, and he's done with just suffering. The shift is this. You stop treating your history as damage and start treating it as curriculum. You take the thing that nearly broke you and you ask it what it knows. Because it knows more than anyone who hasn't been through it. And that knowledge, earned, not studied, is the beginning of a kind of authority that cannot be faked and cannot be taken. Which brings us to the third shift. And this one will feel wrong at first. Every time you explained yourself, you handed them the blueprint to destroy you. Sit with that for a second, because version 1 is addicted to being understood. He over-explains, he justifies, he provides context no one asked for, because somewhere deep down he believes that if he just makes his reasoning clear enough, people will finally approve of him. And here's what actually happens. Every explanation is a concession. Every justification is an admission that you feel your position requires defense. And the moment you feel that, the moment they see you feel that, the power has shifted. Right. This is not about being mysterious for the sake of theater. This is about understanding a deep psychological truth. Ambiguity creates attribution. When people don't know your reasoning, they fill in the gaps with what they project onto you. And what do people tend to project onto someone who speaks deliberately, gives nothing away, and seems entirely at peace with not being understood? Power, competence, danger. The human brain is pattern-seeking. When it can't find the pattern, it assumes the pattern is more sophisticated than it can perceive. You think explaining yourself made them respect you more? Here's the truth. It told them where you are uncertain. It told them what you need. And need, visible, verbalized need for approval or understanding, is the most precise vulnerability a person can hand to someone who might one day use it against them. Machiavelli once wrote that the wise man never shows all his cards, not because he's a liar, but because full transparency in a world that is not fully trustworthy is not honesty, it's exposure. And there is a difference between the two. Honesty is a value. Exposure is a risk. Version 2 is honest about the things that matter. He is silent about the architecture of his thinking. The shift is this. You stop explaining, not forever, not to everyone, but you radically reduce the number of situations in which you feel compelled to justify your decisions to people who did not earn that information. You let your outcomes speak. You let your silence speak. You become comfortable being slightly misread, knowing that the discomfort of being misunderstood is far less costly than the vulnerability of being fully known by the wrong people. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. It makes people lean forward. It makes them wonder. And a person who wonders about you is already in a position of reaching toward you, not the other way around. Drop this in the comments. My silence speaks power. The fourth shift tells you what to do with people who are waiting for you to break. Detachment. And I need you to understand what that word actually means before your conditioning rewrites it into something it's not. Version 1 hears detachment and thinks coldness, thinks loneliness, thinks, if I stop caring what happens, what's the point? But that's not what detachment is. Detachment is not the absence of preference. It's the absence of desperation. And that distinction will change everything about how you move through the world. Here's the truth. The person who needs the outcome most has the least power in any negotiation, any relationship, any room. The moment someone senses that you need their approval, their love, their business, their validation, they have leverage over you that they didn't earn and didn't ask for. And whether they're conscious of it or not, that leverage will be used. Not always maliciously. Sometimes just because humans are drawn toward testing limits that are offered to them. You leave a door open, someone eventually walks through it. Look, you've felt this before. The relationship where you cared more, and somehow that caring became the very thing that made the other person pull back. The job you wanted so badly that your desperation leaked into the interview, and you could feel it happening in real time, but couldn't stop it. The friendship where you were always the one reaching out, always the one accommodating, and at some point you realized the dynamic had been set in concrete, and you had poured it yourself. That's not bad luck. That's physics, emotional physics, right? And this is the part no one tells you. The antidote is not to stop wanting things. Version 2 is not a monk. He has desires, ambitions, people he loves. The difference is he has cultivated what the Stoics called amor fati, love of fate, not as passive acceptance, but as strategic orientation. He moves toward what he wants without his identity being contingent on getting it. He can walk away from a table, and the table knows it. And that knowledge changes what the table offers. Machiavelli understood this when he said that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. People misread that as cruelty. What he meant was this: love, as most people practice it, is conditional. People love you when it's convenient, when you're useful, when you're winning. Fear, in the Machiavellian sense, is not terror. It's respect born from the recognition that you have nothing to lose. A man with nothing to lose is genuinely unpredictable. And genuinely unpredictable people are treated with a caution that comfortable, predictable people never receive. Begging, and I use that word deliberately, begging for someone to stay, to choose you, to see you, to give you what you need. It is the single fastest way to ensure they don't. Not because people are cruel, though some are, but because begging signals that your inner world is contingent on their decision, And no one wants to be responsible for another person's entire emotional architecture. It's too heavy. They will leave the weight behind. Version 2 detaches from outcomes, from approval, from the need to be chosen, and in doing so becomes precisely the kind of person others feel compelled to choose. Not through manipulation, through genuine sovereignty. There's a coldness to it, yes. The cold of deep water, still, unreadable, and somehow more compelling than the frantic warmth of someone reaching. The shift is this. You practice not needing the answer immediately. You practice sitting with uncertainty without filling the silence with concessions. You let people come to you on their own timeline, and if they don't come, you update your understanding of who they are. The desperation you've been carrying, the need to be wanted, included, valued, seen, you don't suppress it. You transmute it. You redirect it toward building something that makes the question of their approval irrelevant. Because there is a version of you that is so absorbed in building, creating, moving, that you genuinely don't have the bandwidth to wait by a metaphorical door for someone to open it from the other side. And when you become that person, something strange happens. Doors start opening that you forgot were there. Boundaries. And before you roll your eyes because you've heard the word 1,000 times in contexts that made it sound like a therapy exercise, let me reframe it entirely. A boundary is not a conversation. A boundary is a consequence. This is where version 1 makes the mistake that costs him years. He announces his limits. He explains his limits. He defends his limits. He has long emotional discussions about his limits. And then when the limit is crossed, again because it always gets crossed when it's treated as negotiable, he forgives without installing the consequence. And forgiveness without consequence is not generosity. It is a contract that says, you can do this again. Look, forgiveness as an internal act, releasing the poison from your own system. That's real, and it matters. Version 2 forgives. He processes, he moves through. He does not carry bitterness like a second skeleton. But here's the truth. Internal forgiveness and external consequence are not the same transaction. You can forgive someone completely and still ensure they never have access to that particular lever again. In fact, that combination, genuine peace internally, clean consequence externally, is one of the most powerful positions a human being can occupy. There's no anger to manipulate, no wound to poke, just a quiet, permanent restructuring of access. Because here's what happens without consequences. You tell someone what you will not tolerate. They cross that line. You express your feelings. They apologize. And the apology is real, maybe, in that moment. And then the cycle completes. Because the absence of real consequence taught them something more powerful than the conversation. It taught them the line is theoretical. That expressing remorse resets the clock. That you are someone whose stated limits can be tested until they yield, right? And this is the part no one tells you. People are not testing your limits because they're evil. They're testing them because that's how humans navigate social reality. We push until we find solid ground. When the ground beneath your stated limits is soft, when it gives under pressure, when it forgives and absorbs and adjusts, people unconsciously catalog that. They don't do it with malice. They do it the way water finds the path of least resistance. It's not personal, it's structural. Machiavelli once wrote that men must either be pampered or crushed, because they can get revenge for small injuries, but not for great ones. I'm not suggesting you crush anyone. What I am suggesting is that small, bloodless consequences, consistently applied, without drama, without lengthy explanation, are more effective at reshaping behavior than any confrontation you could have. The consequence doesn't need to be punishment, it can be simple distance, reduced access, a quiet downgrade in how much of yourself you make available to someone who demonstrated they don't handle access well. Version 1 negotiates his own limits. Version 2 simply enforces the architecture he's already decided on. There's a difference between someone who says, "Don't do this, or I'll be upset," and someone whose behavior makes clear that certain actions simply result in certain outcomes, without negotiation, without drama, without the lengthy emotional post-mortem. The second person is operating from structure. The first is operating from hope. And hope, as a boundary strategy, has a very poor track record. The shift is this: you stop announcing and start installing. You decide in advance, not in the heat of emotion, not in reaction, what access looks like for different people based on how they've handled it. And when someone demonstrates they handle access poorly, the response is not a confrontation. It's a quiet, permanent calibration. No announcement, no ultimatum. Just a restructuring that they will feel before they can name it. And when they feel it, when they notice the temperature has changed and ask what's wrong, you will not explain. Which takes us directly into the sixth shift. Silence, real silence. Not the passive-aggressive silence of someone who wants to be noticed, not talking. Not the wounded silence of someone who has run out of words. The deliberate architectural silence of someone who has understood that in most conversations, most negotiations, most conflicts, most moments of social pressure, the first person to fill the quiet loses. You think silence is empty? Here's the truth. Silence is the heaviest thing in a room. When someone says something designed to provoke you, to destabilize you, to get a reaction, and you give them nothing, what they experience in that void is not neutrality, it is dread. Because their entire play was built around a specific response, and you just deleted their script. Now they improvise. And people improvising under pressure reveal everything. Look, most people are terrified of silence. The discomfort of an unfilled pause feels almost physically painful to someone conditioned to believe that responsiveness equals care. So they fill it, they explain, they backpedal, they offer more than was asked for because the quiet feels like disapproval, and disapproval feels like danger. Version 2 has made peace with that discomfort. When you can sit in a pause without flinching, when you can receive a provocation and simply look at the person before responding, if you respond at all, you watch them recalibrate in real time. You watch them decide you're more than they thought. Right. And this is the part no one tells you. Unpredictability is armor. When people can predict your reactions, they own the map of you. But when your responses are genuinely difficult to anticipate, you become expensive to manipulate. The calculus required to engineer a specific reaction from you grows too complex. And most people, encountering that complexity, will choose less resistance elsewhere. Machiavelli once wrote that the timing of action is everything. Silence is not inaction. It is the strategic interval between stimulus and response, the space in which you choose rather than react. A man who always reacts immediately is a man whose behavior can be engineered. A man who pauses, who absorbs, considers, then moves on his own timeline, is genuinely inaccessible. The shift is this: you become comfortable being slightly unreadable. You let a loaded question sit in the air before deciding whether it deserves an answer at all. Because silence from someone who has something to say is not absence. It's a statement. And statements made in silence cannot be argued with, cannot be taken out of context, cannot be used against you. They simply exist, felt by everyone in the room, owned entirely by you. The seventh shift is the one that will cost you the most to accept. Not because it's complicated, because it contradicts something you were taught to treat as sacred: loyalty. You were told it's the measure of character, that a loyal person is a good person, that loyalty is what separates the people worth keeping from the ones who leave when it gets hard. And there's truth in that, partial truth, the kind that becomes a trap when you follow it past the point where it serves you. Because here's what no one told you about loyalty. Unconditional loyalty to people is not a virtue, it's a vulnerability, and in the wrong hands, it is a leash. Look, version 1 is loyal to people. to specific human beings who he has decided deserve his allegiance regardless of what they do with it. And the reason that becomes a trap is simple. People change. Circumstances change. The person who earned your loyalty 3 years ago may be operating from entirely different motivations today. But version 1 doesn't reassess. He cites history. He says, but we go back but they were there when, and in doing so, he hands someone a claim on him that their current behavior does not justify. Version 2 is loyal to something else entirely. He is loyal to his purpose, to the direction he has chosen, to the values he has decided are non-negotiable. People are welcome in his life to the degree that they move in a compatible direction. When they stop moving in that direction, when their choices begin to pull against his trajectory, the loyalty doesn't obligate him to follow them into territory that costs him his path. He adjusts quietly, without ceremony. Here's the truth. The most dangerous form of manipulation available to someone who wants to control you is the weaponization of your own loyalty. It works like this. They establish history with you. Real history, genuine moments, things that mattered. And then they make withdrawals against that history indefinitely because they know you've been taught that loyalty means the history outweighs the present. Every time you consider pulling back, they invoke the past. After everything we've been through, after everything I did for you. And version 1 folds because he's been trained to treat loyalty as a debt that compounds. Right? And this is the part no one tells you. The people who invoke your loyalty most loudly are almost never the people who are most loyal to you. The people who are genuinely on your side don't need to remind you of it. They demonstrate it continuously in small, unannounced ways. The ones who call upon your loyalty as leverage are the ones who have understood that it's the most effective tool they have. They're not wrong. It is effective. On version 1. Machiavelli once wrote that a prince who is not himself wise cannot be well advised. What that means beyond politics is this: the quality of your judgment about who deserves access to you determines the entire trajectory of your life. Loyalty given without ongoing assessment is not loyalty. It's abdication of judgment. You've stopped thinking and started paying a debt that was never legitimately incurred. The shift is this: you relocate your loyalty from people to principles, from history to trajectory. You ask not how long have I known this person, but where is this person going, and does that direction serve or cost the version of me I am building? This doesn't mean you abandon people at the first difficulty. It means you stop treating the mere fact of shared history as an obligation to accept behavior that contradicts your values or impedes your path. Because here's what becomes possible when you make this shift. You stop being ownable. A man whose loyalty belongs to his purpose rather than to specific people cannot be controlled through his relationships. He cannot be manipulated through guilt. He cannot be leveraged through history. He becomes, in the most precise sense, self-directed. And self-directed people are genuinely difficult to stop because the engine driving them is internal. You cannot negotiate with a man's internal engine from the outside, which is exactly where the 8th shift lives, untouchable. And I need you to understand that word the way version 2 understands it, not as invulnerability, not as the absence of pain, not as some armored state where nothing gets through. Untouchable means something more precise and more powerful than that. It means that your fundamental sense of self, your direction, your worth, your capacity to act, is no longer contingent on what happens to you from the outside. You've met people like this, maybe once or twice in your life. People who have been through things that should have destroyed them and somehow came out the other side, not harder exactly, but denser, more themselves. Like pressure had compressed something in them that was already there and made it more concentrated. You couldn't quite explain it, but you felt it, a quality of presence that made the room slightly different when they were in it. Not because they performed power, because they had arrived somewhere internally that most people never reach. That place is not a mystery, it's a destination, and the path to it runs directly through everything we've covered: the cessation of indiscriminate giving, the metabolization of pain, the discipline of silence, the architecture of real consequences, the detachment from outcomes, the relocation of loyalty. Each of those shifts is a layer of conditioning removed. And what's underneath the conditioning, when you strip enough of it away, is something that was there before anyone told you who to be. Look, most people live their entire lives as a response to what their family expected, what their culture required, what their fears demanded, what their wounds made them avoid. Version 1 is almost entirely reactive. His actions are generated by external pressure rather than internal direction. And because his behavior is a response to the outside controls him. Change the stimulus, and you change the man. Version 2 has done something different. He has, through deliberate and often painful work, developed a relationship with himself that doesn't require external validation to remain stable. He knows what he values without being told. He knows what he will and won't accept without needing to be pushed to the limit to find out. He knows where he's going without needing someone else to confirm the direction is right. And because he knows these things, because the foundation is internal, external events lose their power to destabilize him. Here's the truth. Fear of pain is the primary mechanism through which most people are controlled. The fear of losing someone's approval, the fear of being alone, the fear of failure, of exposure, of being seen as less than what you've projected. Those fears are real, and they are leverage that anyone with enough social intelligence can find and use. Version 1 is full of these pressure points, and the tragedy is he doesn't even know they're there. Right? And this is the part no one tells you. When you have genuinely moved through your deepest fear, when you have looked at the worst version of what could happen and made peace with it, you become something that the fear-based system of social control cannot process. Because the mechanism requires a threat. And a man who has already accepted the worst-case outcome cannot be threatened with it. What do you say to someone who has already let go of what you're threatening to take? Machiavelli once wrote that there is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in introducing a new order of things. The new order he's describing doesn't have to be political. It can be internal. The most radical revolution you can conduct is the one inside your own psychology, the decision to stop being organized around fear and start being organized around direction. That transition is perilous because it requires you to give up the comfort of being understandable, predictable, manageable. You will confuse people. You will lose people who were only comfortable with the version 1 who needed things from them. And you will find, on the other side of that loss, a quality of freedom that the version 1 you used to be would not have been able to comprehend, because he was too busy managing everyone's perception of him to have any energy left over for the actual business of becoming. The shift is this. You stop organizing your life around what you're afraid of losing and start organizing it around what you are building. You make the fear conscious. You name it. You look at it directly. You ask it what it's actually protecting you from. And then you walk toward it slowly, deliberately, until the distance between you and it closes, and you discover it was smaller than the shadow it cast. Every fear faced directly shrinks. Every fear avoided grows. And when you have done this enough times, when you have walked through enough of the things that used to have the power to stop you, something settles in you that has no name in the language of comfort. It's not happiness exactly. It's not confidence in the way motivational language uses the word. It's something quieter and more permanent. A kind of solidity. A knowledge that whatever comes, you have already demonstrated to yourself that you can move through it. That knowledge cannot be given to you. It cannot be told to you. It can only be earned through the specific process of moving through the things that scared you. So here's where we land. Two versions of yourself have been present in everything we've covered. Version 1, and I say this without judgment because I have been him, most people have been him, is not weak. He's unexamined. He's running on default settings installed by people who had their own unexamined defaults. He gives too much to the wrong people because he was taught that giving is inherently good. He explains himself because he was taught that transparency builds trust. He absorbs violations because he was taught forgiveness is grace. He stays loyal past the point of sense because he was taught that loyalty is character. None of those teachings were malicious, but applied without discernment, without the filter of actual psychology and actual power, they produce a man who is drained, underestimated, and quietly confused about why his efforts don't produce the life he deserves. Version 2 is not a different person. He is the same person after examination, after the work, after the willingness to look at how human behavior actually operates rather than how he was told it should. He is not cruel. He is not cold in the way that means empty. He is cold in the way that means controlled, precise, moving from internal direction rather than in response to the pressure of the moment. The 8 shifts are not a performance. They are a practice. And like any practice, they require repetition past the point of comfort, past the first resistance, past the voice that says, "This isn't who I am." Because that voice is not protecting your identity, it is protecting your habits. And your habits, until now, have been protecting the wrong version of you. You already know which version you've been. The question now is which version you're willing to build, and whether you're willing to pay the price of becoming someone that the old version of you wouldn't fully recognize. Drop this in the comments. I am untouchable now.